Hey there guys, today I'm going to take a break from the travel trailer project and instead I'm going to give you an updated tour of my chicken coop. It's one of the first things that I built after building my house about 10 years ago and has been holding up very well ever since. I've recently been getting a lot of questions about it, so I figured an updated tour was in the works. So I'm going to show you all the upgrades that I've done to it since originally building it. But first I will start with the general dimensions, construction, as that is probably the most common question that most people have. Okay, so I'm going to start off with just the basics since that is the most common question I get asked. The general dimensions of this coop are almost completely full sheets of plywood. So each side is 4 feet by 8 foot, and then the ends are a full sheet of plywood 4 feet wide, positioned vertically like this with the roof pitches cut out of those. That way I could get the maximum use out of all of the plywood that I bought for this coop. The floor space is exactly a 4 foot by 8 foot sheet of plywood, and then all of the framing inside is just standard stick framing. I used 2x3s, much like you would build a house or a shed. This is my main entry door. This is where I access the coop most commonly. I store my feed over here, and when I do any clean out, I usually push the broom from this side out to the clean out door on the other side, but I'll show you that in a little bit. As for the trim, I used almost all 1x3s or 1x2s to trim it out, with the exception of the gable ends where I used 2x4s, and I just did that because I thought it gave a nicer look, a little more depth. And one more thing about the trim, it does more than give a nice aesthetic look to the coop. It also serves to protect the edges of the plywood, as well as giving a weatherproof seal around the doors and windows. You'll notice on the inside I've used trim to create a little lip, so that when the door is closed, any rainwater that gets past there runs down to that lip and then on out. So now we will move on over to where the egg box is. You will notice that egg box is 4 feet wide, and again I made the egg box with the scraps from the gable ends, the pieces of plywood I used for the gable ends. The other end of the coop is pretty much the same as the front side with a few exceptions. I forgot to mention I do have gable vents on both sides to give a little bit more ventilation, as well as a big vent down here. The window on this side is mesh, not polycarbonate like the other side, and that is because most of our monsoon rains come from the direction of the other side of the coop, so I try to keep the water out. Here I just want a little bit more ventilation. Down here I have a clean out access door, but I will talk about that a little bit more later. And then through the coop run is where we get access to the backside of the coop. This is where the feeder, the water, and the access ramp are located. I didn't mention it earlier, but the coop is up on stilts, so there is approximately 22 inches of headroom underneath there. The chickens like to get in there, stay in the shade, dig holes, and basically stay cool during the summer. But it also provides a way to keep snakes out of the coop. I have had them in the run, but never in the coop. So let's get on to some of the other features now. Okay, now for the rainwater harvesting system. Many of you know I live off of rainwater, so I don't like to let any of it go to waste. For the coop, the harvesting system starts at my little makeshift gutters. I made these out of corner flashing, so they don't have super high capacity, but they work fine. Water comes off the roof into this first little elbow, PVC elbow, in this pipe. It runs to the other side, which is the exact same setup, and then down to a blue rain barrel. No, I don't have any filters or screens on these inlets because I have them over here on the barrel. I have a little insert cup. It was actually an old sandbox cup that I just put a metal screen in, and whenever it gets filled up, I just dump it out, and that keeps the water pretty darn clean inside this barrel. And the barrel eventually leads to the water system, which I guess I'll show you right now. Now for the chicken watering system. It all begins at the blue barrel that collected all of the rainwater, and that barrel is placed upon a old scrap wood stand that I built many years ago and always intended on replacing, but the stand is still holding fine, so I don't know when I'll replace it. Anyway, from that barrel I have some simple irrigation fittings that run down into a line into the ground, and it goes over to the watering station. And the irrigation pipe runs up right here to a PVC pipe that holds the watering nipples. And this is what the watering cups look like up close. They have a little yellow nipple inside that, when depressed, allows water to fill the cup. I think they're supposed to mimic a flower or something in nature where a bird would naturally peck inside there to get rainwater. I don't know, it might just be a feel-good thing for chicken owners, but so far so good. They're really easy for the chickens to water from. There's usually a little residual water in there, and they're also really easy to clean. You simply twist the cups off, flush anything out that you need, and put the cups back on. I also have an additional clean out on the end in case I want to flush the entire system. And here's my chicken feeder. This is the primary way my chickens get food. I made it out of a piece of HVAC duct pipe and cap and various other pieces of hardware, and then I mounted it to a galvanized dish on the bottom. It's no different than any other gravity style feeder. Simply holding the food up top and letting it collect in a tray down here. It holds approximately 30 pounds of food. I do have a build video on this. It has a little carry handle, and then on the top where the cap is, I have a little measuring stick that I have painted green, yellow, red, and that pretty much says how much food is left. If it gets to the red, I know I need to fill up the food. Easy way to check it without actually taking the cap off and looking. The other ways my chickens get food are through dinner table scraps, kitchen scraps, and then free ranging as you see them walking around. I pretty much let them out almost every day, and they get bugs and grasshoppers and all that good stuff. Okay, so I'm right in the middle of doing my chicken coop update video, and I just saw a rattlesnake over there, so I figured it'd be a good time to test my DIY snake pole that I made probably about a year ago. Here's the handle, and there is the business end. So he is right about there. All right. The next feature is the clean out door. I sometimes refer to this as the chicken coop poop door. It's just an access hatch that allows me to clean the coop really easily. The door flips up, and behind the door are two trays full of bedding. When I get ready to clean out the coop, I simply slide out a tray. I take it to the compost barrel, dump it in the desert, or basically just get rid of it. Add new bedding and slide back in. Makes it really quick and convenient. I have a separate video where I did just that if you want to check it out. One of my favorite modifications I ever made to this coop was to add a lift assist for the egg box door. It wasn't that it was too heavy, but having something to hold the door open while you're working inside, picking up eggs, is just kind of nice, and it also makes it really easy for my daughter to use. So this cable is attached to a counterweight inside with a pulley, and as you lift, the counterweight goes down. You can hold the door halfway up, you can leave it all the way up, and it's just really nice and convenient. I have a couple hens right now that are sitting on some eggs, so they're not too happy with me right now. So I will let them get back to their hatching business. A little bit about the coop run. It is approximately 24 feet long by 16 feet wide, and it's constructed of landscape timbers, 2x3s, chicken wire for the sides, and then 2 layers of bird netting over the top, with one of those layers being the higher quality nylon twine style. The chicken wire goes into the ground approximately 12 to 15 inches and then juts out about 20 to 24 inches with dirt backfilled over it. That way, if little animals try to dig in within that couple of foot range, they end up hitting the chicken wire. And so far, I haven't had any breaches. Around the lower perimeter is an electric fence, and I'll talk about that a little bit more with the other security thing. There was one other thing I wanted to make mention about the construction of the coop run. This is easily the most disappointing aspect of my entire coop build. These landscape timbers I got on sale from Home Depot or Lowe's for $2 a piece, and at the time I thought it was a great deal. The problem was I didn't realize how poorly they were twisted and split in some areas, and it just made putting this whole structure up that much more difficult. If I had it to do over again, I would use really nice and straight 4x4s, and that way it would just make everything that much better. But with that said, this is almost 8 years old and it's still holding up fine. So It's definitely a cheap coop run, but if I ever rebuild it, I will definitely not use landscape timber. As for amenities inside the coop run, I don't have too many things that I have built for them since I do let them free range almost every single day, but I do have some extra roosting space outside. This is a little roost I made with some pallet wood slats to give a shaded area, and then I just cut 2 single branches out of some mesquite trees to make some natural roosts for them. And here's the entrance to the coop run. Nothing special, just a super basic door built with these crappy landscape timbers, but there is a little catch on the inside that I thought was pretty cool. I'll show you that now. And the last thing I'll talk about is security. How do I keep the chickens safe from predators? Well, I do so through 3 primary means. Number 1 is simply just physical barriers. You've seen most of them. It's the fences, the netting, the doors, the coop, anything to physically keep the predators away from the chickens. Number 2, that solar panel up there powers an electric fence that runs the perimeter of the coop and run. And number 3, I have some solar lights that act as a little bit of a deterrence around the coop and run. So when predators are walking at night, something comes on, maybe startles them a little bit. And then lastly, I have one last ditch effort to seal the chickens in the coop while I fix whatever problem's happening. There is the wire from the solar panel along that top board. It runs down to a charge controller, which charges a deep cycle marine battery. From that battery, the power is routed through a little toggle switch that then goes back up to the fence energizer, and this is an AC/DC version, so I'm charging it with a battery right now, or running it with a battery, but I can also use AC power, and this battery is several years old, so eventually I'm going to just switch to that. And my final line of defense, in case the coop run or electric fence ever get compromised, I can lock the chickens in here until I can figure out a solution to whatever's happening. And to do that, I just drop a little trap door. I use my food measuring stick. Drop the door right here. And the chickens are going to be secure, at least for a while. Alright guys, that is pretty much it. I hope this was informative and maybe gave you some ideas of things that you might want to do to your own coop, or perhaps a future coop project that you have in the works, or maybe some ideas of things you don't want to do based on what you've seen here. So far this setup has worked well for me and I am pretty darn happy with it. Definitely not perfect. There are things that I would change, as I mentioned, with the coop run and different things like that. If I had to do it over again, I would probably not use netting over the top. I would put a solid surface. But so far, I've never had any bobcats or animals get in there. I think it has to do with something with the soft, squishy netting, and most animals don't want to get trapped. But that's not to say that it is the best covering out there. If you do not have chickens at this current point in time, I would definitely recommend them. I think they are probably one of the easiest animals to take care of. They provide eggs, they provide enjoyment and entertainment. Kids love them. And honestly, I love just watching them walk around. They get bugs and grasshoppers and other pests that might be getting into your garden. So they are all around just an easy animal to take care of and an enjoyable animal to have around. So anyway, next week, I don't know what I'm going to have planned, but it may or may not be the trailer project. Anyway, check me out on Instagram. Give me a thumbs up if you like this, and I will see you guys next time.